My sister stabbed my baby shower cake 47 times with a knife, and then she turned and lunged at my stomach with it, screaming that I had ruined her life. What happened next was worse than the knife, and I need you to stay with me until the end. Because this story does not end where you think it ends. My name is Natalie. I'm 8 months pregnant. And I'm telling this story from a hotel room, sitting on the edge of a bed with my hands wrapped around a cup of cold tea because I can't go home right now. My own mother, my husband, and my sister all have keys to my house, and not one of them is on my side tonight. I need to explain what led up to the shower first, because if I just tell you about the knife, you'll think this is a story about one terrible moment. It isn't. It's a story about what was hidden underneath that moment, and what it took to finally see it. If you're new here, welcome to Anonymous Confessions, where real stories get told without the filter. Hit subscribe, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you is going to make you question how well you really know the people closest to you. My sister Vanessa and I had always been close. 2 years apart. We shared a bedroom until I was 12. We called each other on long drives. When I got engaged to Blake, she cried at the proposal video before I even finished playing it. Or at least, that's the version of us I believed in. That's the version I'd been carrying for 28 years. The cracks I can see now were there. But I explained them away the way you do with family. The way you have to if you want to keep loving someone without asking too many questions. 6 months before the shower, Vanessa started being strange on the phone. Short, distracted, she missed my gender reveal party, said she had a work thing. I didn't push. She'd been trying to make partner at her law firm for years, and I knew the IEC. Pressure was real. 3 months before the shower, she called me at 2 a.m. crying. When I answered, she asked, did you know? Then she said, never mind, and hung up. I called back 4 times. She didn't answer. The next day, she said she'd been drunk and upset about a bad date. I believed her. 2 months before the shower, she texted asking about her lease renewal. Should she move or stay? I gave her advice about building equity. She replied, easy for you to say. Some of us don't have everything handed to us. I asked what she meant. She said she was just stressed about money and changed the subject. 1 month before the shower, she asked if I needed help setting up. I said the event planner had it handled and thanked her. She sent back a thumbs up. 5 days before the shower, that was the last time we texted, I didn't think anything of it. I was 8 months pregnant, finishing a nursery, managing work, and getting ready for the biggest party of my life. I wasn't paying attention to the silences between messages. I wasn't reading the subtext. I was just living. It was my baby shower. 50 guests. The venue had soft lighting and flower arrangements along every table. There was a $300 cake, pale yellow frosting, little handpipe ducks along the base, our daughter's name written in cursive across the top. I had spent more time choosing that cake than I'd spent on my wedding flowers. Vanessa arrived with everyone else. She hugged me, said the venue looked beautiful. She was wearing a blue dress I'd never seen before, and her hair was down. I noticed. Her eyes were slightly red around the edges, but told myself she was probably tired. 20 minutes into the party, I was at the dessert table talking to my mother-in-law when I heard a sound behind me. A thud. Then another. Then another. I turned around and Vanessa was standing at the cake table with the serving knife in her hand, bringing it down into the cake. Not cutting. Driving it in. Over and over, hard enough that frosting was landing on the tablecloth, on her dress, on the guest nearest to her. The sound was rhythmic and terrible, and the room had gone completely silent except for that sound. 47 times. I know because someone counted while watching the video back. Then she stopped. She looked at me across the table, and she turned the knife toward me and took a step forward. My best friend Lacey moved before I could process what was happening. She put herself between us and shoved Vanessa back hard. The knife hit the floor. 50 people stood absolutely frozen. Phones half raised, nobody sure whether to record or run. I felt the baby kick, hard, frantic, like she knew. My cousin Michelle was already calling the police. My mother-in-law was crying. And my own mother Patricia, who had been standing right beside me, grabbed my arms from behind. Not to hold me up, to hold me still. Her grip was tight enough to leave bruises I would find the next. "Morning, Natalie," she said quietly, directly into my ear. "You need to calm down. You are making a scene." I was making a scene. Vanessa was on the floor sobbing, mascara running in black rivers down her face. And Blake, my husband, the man who 2 days before had texted me a photo of a onesie he'd bought at Target with 3 heart emojis, the man who had sat with me through every appointment and every anxious night. Blake walked past me without a word and crouched down beside my sister. He put his hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," he said softly. "Just breathe." He didn't look at me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't take a single step in my direction. Have you ever watched someone you loved choose a side and felt the exact moment it stopped being something you could explain away? Vanessa looked up at me from the floor, and through all of it, the tears, the chaos, the frosting on her dress, there was something in her eyes that I can only describe as triumph. "You take everything," she said. "Everything that was ever supposed to be mine." I heard sirens somewhere outside. Someone had actually called the police. "Good." Lacey took my hand. "We're leaving right now," she said, and I let her pull me toward the door because my legs felt like they weren't entirely connected to my body anymore. In Lacey's car, I didn't speak for 10 minutes. I just sat with my hand on my belly and breathed. "Did you know something was wrong?" I finally asked her. "Between me and Vanessa, between me and Blake, any of this." She chose her words carefully. She said she'd noticed Vanessa acting strange for weeks, that she hadn't shown up when she said she would, that her social media had been full of vague, pointed things about people who smiled at you while taking what was yours. "I thought you two had a fight," Lacey said. "I didn't think—" She gestured helplessly. "Nobody thinks it goes that far." Blake's text came an hour later. "I'm staying at my brother's tonight. We need space. Don't come home yet. Don't come home. To my own house, the one we bought together 3 years ago." I called him. He answered after 4 rings, his voice careful in a way I didn't recognize. He told me Vanessa was very upset. That my mother was with her. At our house, he confirmed. Yes, they were at our house, and that she needed support right now. "Blake, I'm your wife. I'm carrying your baby. Why aren't you supporting me?" The silence on the other end lasted long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, "Because maybe Vanessa has a point. Maybe we need to talk about some things you've been hiding." He hung up. I sat there staring at my phone like it might explain what had just happened. What things? What hiding? What version of me had Vanessa described to him that made this sentence possible? Lacey made me eat something. I couldn't taste it. Then my mother called. "You need to think about what you've done," she said. Vanessa told me everything. "I am genuinely disgusted. I raised you better than this." "Mom, what did she tell you? What does she think I did?" Long pause. Then quietly, coldly. "Your sister has been in love with Blake since college. You knew that. You've always known it, and you married him anyway." The room tilted. I actually reached for the edge of the table. "What? No." Vanessa never said anything about Blake. Not before we dated, not during, not in 7 years of our marriage. "She told you multiple times. She says you always did this. Her college boyfriend before Blake. A job she interviewed for that you took behind her back. An apartment she wanted that you somehow got instead. She showed me proof, Natalie. Screenshots, old texts, a journal. I saw it with my own eyes. I spent that night going back through everything, every text thread, every old photo, trying to find the version of events my mother was describing. Vanessa's college boyfriend had been a tall blonde guy named Tyler. Mine had been dark-haired Josh. They looked nothing alike. We'd never dated the same people. We hadn't even lived in the same cities after college. She'd gone to New York for law school. I'd stayed in Boston. The job at Meridian Tech, I'd found it on a job board. I hadn't known Vanessa had interviewed there until this conversation. And she'd ended up at a law firm anyway, which was everything she'd ever said she wanted. None of it matched. None of it connected to anything real. And then, just before midnight, an unknown number sent me screenshots. A text conversation. Between me and Blake, supposedly. In it, I was telling Blake that Vanessa had always been the disappointing one in the family. That I'd known she had feelings for him and pursued him anyway, just to prove I could. That I deliberately applied for jobs she wanted. That watching her fail was satisfying. I had never sent a single word of any of it. The text interface was wrong. Slightly different color palette than my actual phone's messages. The timestamp showed conversations at 3 a.m. that I had no memory of because they had never happened. "These are fake," I said, showing Lacey. "Look at the interface. Look at the timestamps. I never sent any of this." Lacey studied them. "They're doctored," she said, "but they're convincing. If you didn't know what you were looking at, you'd believe them." Then another message from the same number. Vanessa's voice, even in text, was unmistakable. "This is who you really are. Now everyone knows." Followed by, "Mom found your old college journal. The one where you wrote about all of this. You can't hide anymore." A journal. I had kept journals in college, but I had never written anything like what she was describing, because I had never felt anything like what she was describing. Blake sent me photos of pages that night. Spiral notebook. Handwriting that looked like mine. Entries describing watching Vanessa practice what she was going to say to a guy at a party, and deciding to get there first. Entries about applying for a job she'd mentioned and not telling her. The handwriting was too close to be a coincidence, but the words were completely, fundamentally wrong. I stared at those pages for a long time, and then something clicked. I pulled up every old photo I could find from college until I found one from my sophomore year. Me and my roommate Julie in our dorm room. On the desk behind us, barely visible if you zoomed in, was a spiral notebook, my journal, and I suddenly remembered exactly what I had been writing about that semester. There was a girl in my sorority named Bethany, relentlessly competitive. If I mentioned a guy, she'd flirt with him at the next party. If I got a good grade, she'd announce she'd gotten higher. I had written about it constantly. The exhaustion of it, the low-grade fury of being in permanent competition with someone who had decided I was her rival. I'd written about making sure to do things before she could, about staying one step ahead just to have some breathing room. What if those entries were real? My real handwriting, my real words. But someone had taken a light box and traced over them, replacing Bethany with Vanessa, replacing the name of whatever guy I'd been writing about with Blake. Who would have had access to my old journals? They were in a box in my childhood bedroom closet, a closet my mother had access to. A mother who, I now learned from Blake, had been having Vanessa over for Sunday dinners for months. Dinners I hadn't attended because I was too pregnant and tired to make the drive. Lacey had her laptop open. She'd been searching quietly while I was on the phone. "Natalie," she said, "did you know Vanessa lost her job 2 months ago?" I sat down heavily. She'd been fired from her law firm for performance issues, missed deadlines, compounding mistakes. A warning 6 months ago that hadn't led to improvement. She was posting on social media like she was still there, still talking about making partner, but she hadn't worked there in 2 months. There were concerning posts in a landlord-tenant forum, someone at Vanessa's address, describing a tenant 3 months behind on rent, and then the detail that made everything cold and clear. 4 months ago, months before my mother supposedly found the journal. Someone with a username that matched. Vanessa's had posted in a creative writing forum asking for detailed advice on how to accurately forge someone else's handwriting. The post had gotten several helpful responses. 4 months of planning. This was not a breakdown. This was not a moment of rage. This was a campaign, constructed carefully over months by someone whose life was collapsing around her and who had decided the reason was me. She'd lost the job. She was losing the apartment. She was watching me. Married, pregnant, housed, employed. And she had built a story where every gap between her life and mine was something I had deliberately caused. And once she believed that story herself, she needed other people to believe it too. So she forged the evidence. She brought my mother in slowly, carefully, over Sunday dinners. She waited until the most public, joyful moment of my life to blow it all up. I showed Blake everything. The original journals. The real text threads with Vanessa, showing she'd never once mentioned having feelings for him. The metadata on the fake screenshots, showing they had all been created within the previous month. The forum post about forging. Handwriting. He read through it all without speaking. Then he put his face in his hands. "Oh my God," he said. "She made all of it up." Yes, but why? How could she? Because her life fell apart and she needed someone to blame. And I was the easiest target. I had the things she wanted and she couldn't accept that the reason was just choices, hers and mine. So she built a story where it was theft. Blake looked up at me. His eyes were red. "I chose them over you. I let her attack you and I took her side. What kind of husband does that? I looked at him. This man I had loved for 7 years. This man who had believed. A forged journal and a fabricated text thread over the wife standing in front of him, 8 months pregnant, asking to be believed. I don't know yet, I said. Maybe eventually I'll have an answer to that. Right now, I just need you to understand what actually happened. He slept on the couch. 2.5 weeks later, our daughter was born. We named her Clara. Blake was there. My dad flew in from Florida the day before. I'd called him that first night, and he'd listened to everything without interrupting, and then said very quietly, "Your mother always protected Vanessa from consequences. This is what happens when you protect someone from consequences their whole life. They never learn how to face them." My dad was there when Clara arrived. Lacey was there. My mother was not there. Vanessa was not there. I didn't feel their absence, the way I thought I would. A week after Clara came home, a letter arrived. Thick envelope. Vanessa's handwriting on the outside. Her real handwriting, not the trace version. She confessed to everything. The fake screenshots created on a burner app. The journal pages traced with a light box, names swapped one by one. The months of Sunday dinners building my mother slowly toward her version of events. She wrote about the job loss, the debt, the weeks of not sleeping, the drinking that had gotten out of hand. She wrote, "I convinced myself first. That's the part I need you to understand. By the time I showed Mom the evidence, I half believed it myself. The altered journal entries felt like they were capturing something true, even if the details weren't accurate. I told myself I was just exposing what was already there. She was checking herself into a psychiatric facility. 60 days, possibly longer. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just said she wanted me to understand. Not because it excused anything, but because she thought I deserved to know the full truth." I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer. Maybe Clara would want to read it someday. Maybe. She'd want to understand what happened with her aunt before she was even born. Or maybe I'd keep it as the document it was. Proof of what people are capable of when they're drowning and too proud to ask for a hand. 3 months later, Vanessa called from a number I didn't recognize. She'd completed the program. She was living in a sober house, working as a paralegal, rebuilding from the ground up. She said she was going to testify against herself in court. Tell them everything she'd done was premeditated, that I deserved full legal protection. "Why are you calling?" I asked. "Because amends aren't just words," she said. "They're actions, and I wanted you to know I'm taking them." A pause. Then, "Is Clara doing okay?" I hesitated. "She's perfect," I said finally. "I'm glad," she said quietly. "I really am. Goodbye, Natalie." Goodbye, Vanessa. That night I sat in the rocking chair in Clara's nursery, the one I'd assembled myself 3 weeks before she was born, and I held her while she slept. Her tiny hand curled around my finger, and I thought about all the people who had shown up when it mattered. Lacey, who hadn't hesitated. My dad, who had come without being asked. The friends who had texted the morning after the shower saying they'd seen the videos and they believed me. Blake, who had failed me badly but was working every day to do better. Family isn't always the people you were born to. Sometimes it's the people who stay in the room when everything falls apart. The spare keys are in the drawer by the front door. 3 copies, one for me, one for Blake, one for emergencies. Vanessa will never have a key to my house again. My mother will not have unrestricted access to my life. I love her, but love and access are not the same thing, and I spent too many years confusing them. Some doors, once you close them, need to stay closed. Not out of cruelty, out of protection for the things that matter most. The sleeping baby, the quiet room, the life you built carefully and defended even when the people who should have believed you didn't. If this story reached something in you tonight, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Anonymous Confessions. Drop your own story in the comments. Every week, people come here with things they've carried alone for years. Your story belongs here too. Clara opened her eyes just then, that unfocused newborn gaze that doesn't quite land anywhere yet. She looked up at me with total, unquestioning trust. "You're safe," I whispered to her. "I promise you're safe." And that's the end of my story. For now.